In the previous video, we had discussed about how to develop a Spark application and submit them to the Spark cluster. This is the Spark cluster, and now we are going to discuss about how the Spark is going to execute our applications on a distributed cluster. As we know that a Spark is a distributed processing engine, now let's discuss about how does this Spark distributed processing model works. So here in this diagram, there is a client and I'm going to explain you the process of how the application is submitted to the cluster and what is the process behind this driver and executor jobs. Okay. So the Spark applies a master slave architecture to every application. So when we submit an application to the Spark, it is going to create a master slave process for your application. For example, see here, this is the A1. Consider this as an application, and these are the slaves. So here, uh, this master process then going to create a bunch of slaves to distribute the work and compute the job. Okay, just for computing and for the distributing of jobs, the driver A1 is creating the executors. Okay, these are considered as slaves. Okay, so we can think of these slaves as a runtime containers with some dedicated CPU and memory. And in Spark terminology, master is a driver and slaves are the executors. The cluster itself might have master node and bunch of slave nodes, but those things are parts of cluster and these are managed by the cluster manager. Okay, so the Spark engine is going to ask the container from the underlying cluster manager to start the driver process. Once the driver process is started, the driver is again going to ask for more containers to start the executed process. Okay, so this is going to happen for each of the applications sent from the client. Okay, so I will tell you an example here. This is the only example. Here we are sending an A1 application and we submitted this application. Now the Spark will request the cluster manager. Okay, for what? For giving the containers. So now the Spark engine will request the cluster manager to give a container and started a driver process for A1 application. Here it is started a driver process for A1 application, and once it is started, once the A1 driver has been started, uh, again it will ask for more containers to the cluster manager. Okay, why? For creating and executing the slaves. Slaves are nothing but executors here, even executors. Okay, this is how the cluster will work and the driver and slaves works to compute the job. So now we got to know that the driver and executors are responsible for running our application code and the job that we need. And now I am going to show you one more application by using the Spark submit utility. We are submitting this application to the cluster, and what it will do the same thing what A1 driver has done. Like here the Spark engine will request for the cluster manager to give a container, okay, and start the driver process for A2 driver. And once the A2 driver is started, this driver will ask for more containers to the cluster manager and starts the slave executors. Okay, this is how it all works. And now A1 and A2 are two independent applications. Both of them are following the master slave architecture we can see here, and they are following their own dedicated driver and executor form. Okay, every Spark application applies a master slave architecture and runs a independently on cluster. This is how the Spark is a distributed computing platform. Okay, we got to know that this is how the Spark is distributed platform. So that's all for today. We will see the remaining topics in the upcoming videos. Please subscribe.